What if I told you a bull yes? A real bull was raised by two horses. Learned to neigh instead of moo, and now believes he's one of them. And what happens when he's finally introduced to his own kind, but doesn't recognize them at all? This is not just a story about animals. It's a breathtaking journey that challenges everything we think we know about identity, family, and love without limits. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Now let's jump into the story. The low morning mist wrapped Sunrise Ridge Sanctuary like a silver blanket, muting every sound except the distant hum of highway tires. Veterinarian Leona Perez balanced a mug of cooling coffee when her phone cracked the silence. Luis Gomez's voice trembled on the line. His dairy had folded overnight. 3-day-old bull calf was motherless and fading fast. Bottle feeds failed. Surrogate cows rejected him. He won't last the day, Luis whispered. Leona's heart pinched. She specialized in abused horses, not cattle. Yet something in Luis's tone said this was no routine call. Bring him, she replied. I'll try. Sunrise Ridge stretched across 30 rolling acres bordered by eucalyptus groves. Faded red barns stood beside fresh-painted paddocks, and wind chimes made soft music in every breeze. Chickens scratched near feed bins, while 2 elderly goats dozed by a pile of warm straw. 2 newcomers, the place looked sleepy, but Leona knew. Energy pulsed beneath the calm, ready to rally whenever a life hung in balance. As Atlas settled, Leona's mind churned. If she succeeded, the calf would live. Yet what kind of life awaited a bull who followed horse rules? Neighbors might laugh, donors might question her judgment, but the alternative, a lonely death in a shuttered barn, was unthinkable, she decided. The only sin would be failing to try. Before 8, a rattling stock trailer climbed the gravel drive. The ramp dropped and the calf emerged, legs splayed like loose scaffolding. His coat was dark chocolate, eyes wide and searching. Amber, the golden mar, lifted her head from hay and offered a low, comforting nicker. Blaze, a black gelding, stepped nearer, ears sharp. Riley, Leona's assistant, noted how thin the calf looked. Ribs showed under loose skin, knees knocked with each shaky step. Leona knelt. That easy little one. Warm breath misted her sleeve. Intelligence flickered behind the calf's frightened stare. Atlas, she murmured, naming him for the way he tried to hold up his heavy head. Protocol ordered isolation for newcomers. But the horses kept calling, and Atlas turned toward them with every uneven wobble. Leona felt rulebook slipping from her hands. She set a straw-lined pen beside the main paddock fence, added a heat lamp, and eased Atlas inside. Amber approached the rails immediately, nose extended. Atlas rose on tiptoe to meet her touch. Blaze began pacing the fence, gentle yet vigilant. The morning fog thickened until animals looked like charcoal sketches moving across paper. First feeding came at noon. Leona warmed milk replacer and slid the oversized bottle through the slats. Atlas sniffed, took one uncertain suck, then turned away. Outside, Amber resumed chewing hay, slow and rhythmic. Atlas watched, then lowered his lips to the bedding and mouthed straw, copying her motion. Leona and Riley exchanged startled looks. Studying her, Riley whispered. Afternoon drifted quiet and gray. Atlas traced the horse's every move like a mirror. When Amber pawed the ground, he tried the gesture. When Blaze flicked at flies, Atlas swished his stubby tail. Instead of deep bellows, he produced soft nickers almost indistinguishable from the mares. Fog rolled in thicker by dusk. Lamps glowed faintly along the barn. Leona finished evening rounds and paused at the fence. Amber rested her chin across the rail, humming a lullaby of low nickers. Atlas curled nearby, breathed in. Steady time with her song. Near midnight, thunder shattered the calm. Rain hammered tin roofs. While goats scattered, Blaze galloped to Atlas' pen. Amber closed behind. Lightning revealed a tableau of raw devotion, 2 horses flanking a trembling calf. Blaze planted his body against the wind. Amber stretched her neck over the rail to shield Atlas's face from cold rain. Textbooks never mention such a scene. The storm raged an hour, yet the trio held formation. Leona watched from the porch, rain soaking her coat, heart thumping louder than thunder. She realized compassion sometimes rewrites biology. When dawn arrived pale and damp, Atlas stepped from his pen for the first time, trusting the horse's presence more than solid ground. Amber nudged him forward. Blaze guarded the rear. Their hooves and cloven feet splashed through puddles, making soft music. Atlas lifted his legs high, copying Amber's trot. The attempt looked awkward but determined. Riley filmed, breath turning white. "No one will believe this," she whispered, though 1,000 tiny windows would soon glow with the footage. Leona focused on the moment, filing away worries about horns, weight, future questions. Walked. Atlas breathed, walked, and found family. In shapes nature never planned. As the sun rose higher, mist dissolved into blue sky. Atlas nibbled sparse grass, guided by Amber's example, while Blaze kept watch on the horizon. Sanctuary animals stirred, sensing change though they could not name it. In her logbook, Leona wrote one line before closing the cover. Sometimes protocol must bow to compassion. The first rays of morning slid across Sunrise Ridge Sanctuary like shy visitors, revealing dew on every fence rail. 3 weeks had passed since Atlas, the orphaned calf, arrived. The sanctuary breathed a new rhythm now, a tune with 3 voices instead of 2. Veterinarian Leona Perez stood by the paddock gate and watched the lesson begin exactly at dawn. As if the herd followed an unseen school bell. Amber, the golden mare with the soft eyes, trotted forward first. Her hooves tapped a gentle beat in the dirt, circling the paddock in a wide, loose figure 8. Blaze, the black gelding, mirrored her from the opposite side, muscles rolling beneath his coat like quiet thunder. Atlas, still small beside them but growing stronger each day, stepped into line behind Amber. He lifted his legs high, imitating her graceful stride, though his own cloven hooves clacked instead of thudded. Riley, the young assistant, leaned on the fence and whispered he's turning homework into art. The sanctuary's routine had changed to fit Atlas's unusual education. After the dawn drill came breakfast. Leona placed a shallow feed pan next to the fence. Instead of rushing the milk bucket like a normal calf, Atlas waited. Amber bent her neck to her hay net, tearing mouthfuls with slow, rhythmic chews. Atlas then copied her motion and lowered his muzzle to the pan. Inside it, Leona had hidden ground calf pellets beneath chopped hay, a recipe she called stealth nutrition. Each bite taught Atlas to eat like a horse, while still getting what a young bull needed. Mid-morning brought tail swish practice. Flies loved the warm paddock, so Amber and Blaze fought them with casual flicks. Atlas studied each movement, then tried to swish his shorter tail the same way. Sometimes he missed and slapped his own flank, earning a snort from Blaze that sounded suspiciously like laughter. The calf shook off embarrassment and tried again, learning persistence the way foals do through playful mistakes. Riley filmed every attempt. She kept a binder of notes, timestamps, weather, sounds. One page held only the words knickers, not moos. In place of deep bovine bellows, Atlas produced soft, breathy calls, almost identical to Amber's voice. When Blaze whinnied across the paddock, Atlas answered with a shorter, squeakier version, like a child repeating a parent's phrase.
Ow.
Leona emailed audio clips to former classmates in veterinary school. Most replied with one-line questions. "Corrupted," Leona wrote back. "No glitch. Just a calf who thinks he's a horse." Shortly before noon, a garbage truck rattled down the county road. The clang of the compactor startled barn cats and sent chickens fluttering. Blaze sprang forward, head high, muscles tense. Atlas copied him instantly, stepping sideways in what horse trainers call a half-pass. The movement looked awkward beneath a bovine frame, but it was unmistakably a defensive stance drawn from horse instinct, not cow reflex. The garbage truck rolled out of sight. Blaze calmed. Atlas calmed. Amber walked over and groomed the calves. Shoulder with her lips. Atlas returned the favor with a broad, rough tongue. Leona watched, notebook forgotten, stunned by gentleness crossing a species line. Later that day, clouds crept over the hills, gray and heavy. Thunder grumbled, and the air smelled of wet earth before the first drop fell. Storms used to chase the horses into their shelter, yet the trio now shared one answer to fear. As rain hammered the roof, Blaze positioned himself facing the wind. Amber pressed close to Atlas, forming a living wedge of calm. Lightning flashed, painting their silhouettes against a silver sky. Atlas trembled once, then leaned into Amber's steady warmth. Riley, filming from the barn door, whispered, "This is trust you can't teach from a book." When skies cleared, Leona faced a growing dilemma. Atlas thrived physically, but he copied every horse habit and ignored cow skills. Calves usually learn to butt heads, bellow, and chew cud in a circle. Blaze preferred trotting patterns, gentle nickers, and grooming rituals.
Out!
The veterinarian weighed two futures on a mental scale. One path sent Atlas to a cattle ranch where he might never fit in. The other kept him at Sunrise Ridge, where donors might question why a horse sanctuary now housed a large bull who refused to act like one. That evening, Leona phoned Dr. Malik Khan, an animal behavior researcher she met at a conference years earlier. "I have a case that breaks all the rules," she began. Malik laughed softly. "Those are the best kind. Send me the videos." Leona emailed a folder titled Lessons from the Herd. Within an hour, Malik called back, voice alive. With curiosity, he's learning cultural behaviors, not instinctual ones. "I need to see this in person." While plans formed, sunset painted the paddock in amber light. Atlas, belly full, wandered between his guardians. Amber grazed nearby. Blaze kept watch near the gate. Evening swallows dipped low, catching bugs in fading gold. Atlas lifted his head and followed their flight with bright eyes, perhaps wondering how a creature learns to live in air. Leona realized learning begins with watching, then daring to try. As darkness settled, the trio moved to their shelter, a broad-roofed linta lined with fresh straw. Atlas chose a spot between the horses, pressing flank to flank. Blaze sighed, Amber breathed deep, and the calf's eyelids drooped.
Outside.
Crickets sang. Inside, three bodies shared warmth in a picture of family more true than any pedigree could prove. Leona closed the barn door softly and scribbled in her logbook by flashlight. Today the herd taught patience, courage, imitation, trust. Tomorrow, they will teach something else. Atlas is no longer practicing to be a horse. He is living it. She set the pen down, heart steady, and understood the most important lesson so far. Love does not check birth certificates. It only asks, "Can you keep up?" The sun had barely risen when the rumble of a trailer echoed down the gravel path to Sunrise Ridge Sanctuary. It wasn't unusual for visitors to arrive early, but today's guests weren't coming to admire the horses or deliver supplies. They came with questions and 3 young calves. Dr. Malik Khan stepped out of a white pickup truck, carrying a satchel filled with notepads, a voice recorder, and a small video camera. He was a well-known animal behaviorist, curious, thoughtful, and always looking for the next case that might challenge the rules he once studied. And Atlas, the young bull who believed he was a horse, had quickly become the most puzzling case of all. Leona Perez greeted him at the barn. She had been Atlas's caretaker for months now, watching the little calf grow stronger, more coordinated, and more horse-like by the day. Still, part of her wondered if what she saw was real or just wishful thinking. "I'm not here to prove you wrong," Malek said kindly, seeing the tension in her face. "I'm here to understand what's really going on." The visiting calves were Holsteins, about the same age as Atlas. They stepped down from the trailer with soft moos and curious eyes. Each one wore a colored tag on its ear for tracking. Leona led them into a separate corral just beside the paddock where Atlas, Amber, and Blaze stood. At first, Atlas ignored them completely, stayed close to Amber, nuzzling her side as if sensing something was different today. But then the calves began calling out, sending out their familiar lowing sounds. Atlas lifted his head, ears twitching. His eyes settled on the newcomers. For a few long seconds he stared, unsure. Then he stepped toward the fence that separated them. The calves trotted over eagerly, noses raised in greeting. They lowered their heads slightly, a typical sign of friendly curiosity among cattle. One calf gave a light nudge through the rails. Atlas didn't respond with a nudge or a moo. Instead, he sidestepped, lifting one front leg in a way that looked more like a horse's dance move than any bovine. Reaction. His ears turned forward, tail swished once, and then he gave a soft, breathy sound to nicker. The calves froze, clearly puzzled. One backed away. Another turned in a circle, confused by the unfamiliar greeting. Blaze, who had been standing quietly, moved closer, its body placing a gentle but clear line between Atlas and the corral. Dr. Malik began scribbling notes furiously. "He's not recognizing their cues," he murmured to himself. "He doesn't know how to speak cow." Over the next half hour, Atlas continued to show polite interest in the calves, but never tried to interact in a truly bovine way. He sniffed. The air responded to noises with horse-like movements, eventually wandered back toward Amber, who welcomed him with a soft nudge. "He doesn't see them as his kind," Leona said softly, watching from the fence. "They're just visitors." After the calves were loaded back into the trailer, Atlas didn't linger or show any signs of sadness. He grazed beside Blaze as if nothing had happened. To him, the test wasn't a test. It was simply a moment that confirmed what he'd already knew. His family was here, and it looked like 2 horses. Malik stayed at the sanctuary for 2 days. He filmed Atlas moving with the herd, eating with them, and copying every detail of their routines. He measured Atlas's gait and breathing, compared his vocalizations to standard bovine sounds, and even brought out old veterinary journals to double-check the norms. "You know what's strange?" he said on the second evening, standing by. "The paddock, as the trio settled in for the night, is not just mimicking horse behavior. He's fully part of their world." It's like he forgot he was born anything else. Leona nodded. "Sometimes I think he never really knew." News of Malik's visit and the calf's behavior quickly spread. Within days, the sanctuary received calls from reporters, researchers, and even a local TV station asking to feature Atlas's story. People wanted to see the bull who trotted like a horse and slept between a murr and a gallop. One call stood out among the rest. It came from the Coastal Wildlife Center, a large zoo and research facility not far from the coast. They had just completed a new interspecies learning habitat and believed Atlas would be a perfect fit if Amber and Blaze could come too. "We don't want to break the family," the zoo director said over the phone. "We want to study them as a family." Leona was torn. She had promised herself that Atlas would never be moved unless his emotional well-being was protected. But the idea of giving him more space, more enrichment, and more attention was tempting. The zoo offered advanced care, round-the-clock monitoring, and even transportation for all 3 animals. After a long discussion with Riley and several sleepless nights, Leona agreed, but with one condition. If Atlas ever showed distress, he would return to Sunrise Ridge immediately. As the trailer returned to collect the trio, Atlas stepped in without hesitation. He followed Amber's tail and pressed close to Blaze as the ramp lifted. To him, it wasn't a goodbye. It was a new adventure, one that he would face with the only family he had ever known. The outside world had tested Atlas, but it hadn't changed him. He still believed he was a horse. And now, the world was ready to believe it too. The convoy reached the Coastal Wildlife Center just after sunrise, rolling past tall pines and the distant crash of waves. At the front of the first trailer stood Amber, steady as a lighthouse. Blaze filled the rear, eyes calm but alert. Between them, Atlas swayed gently with the rhythm of the road, trusting the steady scent of his 2 guardians. The instant the ramp dropped, salty wind rushed in, carrying strange smells: seaweed, penguins, popcorn from the visitor plaza. But Atlas stepped forward without fear because family stepped first. The new habitat was nothing like Sunrise Ridge. Soft coastal grass stretched toward a man-made hill, and a shallow pond mirrored the sky.
Ow!
Aluminum viewing rails glinted like morning dew, and hidden cameras tracked every movement for research. 2 resident mares waited inside Willow, a dark bay with cautious eyes and dusk. A silvery gray, who watched everything with quiet curiosity. Keepers opened a dividing gate, then backed away to let nature do the talking. For the first minutes, tension crackled in the air. Willow stamped once, testing the ground, while Dusk pricked her ears. Atlas lowered his head and breathed a gentle nicker, the way Amber had taught him. Instead of charging, he sidestepped in a respectful arc, the classic horse gesture that means, "I am no threat." Amber mirrored the move, then settled into grazing, acting as if disagreements were beneath her notice. Blaze took a single step forward, broad chest saying protection without aggression. Curiosity soon won. Dusk stretched her neck, sniffed Atlas' shoulder, and let out a warm sigh that fogged the cool air. Acceptance arrived in small steps. On day 3, Willow dared to share the long water trough, standing shoulder to shoulder with Amber, while Atlas sipped from the far end. On day 7, Dusk chased a gull across the meadow, kicking up playful dust. Atlas copied her zigzag run, bucking awkwardly, but Dusk wheeled back to join him, ears relaxed. The cameras caught every moment. Scientists in the monitoring room whispered, "He's not imitating now. He's creating his own style." One chilly April night, keepers found Willow lying in the straw shelter, rhythmically breathing through labor pains. Hours later, a tiny filly slipped into the world leg's long coat, the color of distant campfire embers. Staff named her Ember, to honor the first spark of new life in the habitat. Atlas smelled the change in the air and approached slowly. Willow flattened her ears for a heartbeat, then relaxed when she saw Amber standing calmly nearby. Atlas lowered his massive head until his nose almost touched the damp foal. He exhaled softly, a warm cloud that seemed to say, "Welcome, little one." In that breath, a pact was made. Over the next weeks, Atlas played patient uncle, or perhaps gentle babysitter. Whenever Ember's wobbly legs carried her too close to the pond, Atlas herded her back with wide but careful movements, never using horns, only broad shoulders and slow steps. Visitors behind the glass barrier gasped at the sight. 1,000-pound bull guiding a filly with the tenderness of silk threads. In the keeper log, one line appeared again and again. Atlas responds first, horses follow. The bond reached its first public test on a busy Saturday. School buses lined the parking lot, and children clustered against the viewing rail. During a keeper talk, a 7-year-old girl named Mia wriggled under the bottom bar, intent on petting the pretty gray mare. Parents shouted, guides froze. Inside the meadow, Dusk lifted her head, uncertain. Atlas moved before any human could react. He approached the child with slow, rolling steps, head low and eyes soft. When he reached her, he turned sideways and blocked her path, acting like a living gate. Mia's hands pressed against his warm flank. She giggled instead of screaming. Keepers hurried in to lift her back over the rail, hearts pounding yet grateful. No one spoke, but every person in that crowd carried home a story that felt half fairy tale, half miracle. The video went global by nightfall. Headlines called Atlas the bull who guards children, and proof love ignores labels. Meanwhile, the Wildlife Center's research team pored over data. Audio analysis confirmed Atlas used more equine vocal tones than bovine. Movement studies showed he split weight across 4 beats like a canter, rather than the 2-beat trot typical for cattle. Neurologists suggested his brain had rewired pathways during early development, shaped entirely by horse social patterns. They published a paper titled Cross-Species Identity Through Immersion Learning. An Atlas name entered lecture halls around the world. Amid the buzz, Leona Perez visited often, boots crunching on shell pathways. Every time she entered, the back gate Atlas trotted over hooves, striking the earth in the same rhythm Blaze used. Leona would smile, rub the spot between his horns, and whisper, "Still keeping up?" Atlas' soft nicker answered yes, more clearly than words. Leona knew some critics still argued identity was locked to genetics, that a bull was a bull. No. Matter the company. But when she watched Atlas stand guard over Ember, or share a water trough with Willow, the argument dissolved like salt in the sea breeze. Summer slipped into autumn. Ember grew tall and bold, learning fast from every adult in her unusual family. She copied Blaze's lightning turns, Amber's steady walk, and yes, Atlas' gentle patience. Once, researchers observed Ember lowering her head toward Atlas's chest in a gesture young foals reserve for older geldings who act as teachers. Atlas bent his neck and brushed her mane with the flat of his tongue, sealing the role the herd had written for him. One evening, after the crowds left and the sky burned orange over the Pacific, the 5 animals gathered on the hill above the pond. Waves boomed against distant rocks, sending cool spray that smelled of distant storms. Amber nuzzled Blaze's neck. Dusk flicked her tail across Ember's back to chase off a stubborn fly. Atlas stood in the center, horns catching the last light like bronze crescents. He inhaled, then released a low, breathy nicker that blended with the whisper of wind-bent grass. The Mars answered softly. Ember echoed with a high, hopeful squeal. The sound wove through the dusk a choir of differences that somehow made perfect harmony. If a passerby glanced up the hill, they might see only silhouettes and assume it was a group of horses standing together. Look twice, though, and the truth glittered in the fading light. One shape carried horns. One heart beat to a rhythm biology. Never planned, yet everybody in that circle knew the same simple fact: family is built from bonds, not borders. And under that wide coastal sky, Atlas proved it with every breath.